Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, wait till you get a load of all these pixels. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in the town of Varos, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society is in the town of Varos with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I'm joined, as I'm always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. On the way over here today, I was thinking about the many times that I've had speeding tickets.
Oh, yes. How many times have you had speeding tickets? And have you had any recently?
No, the last speeding ticket I got was when I had just been in LA for a few months. So, that was back in 2012. So it's been a while. But before that...
2012 was so long ago.
I know, yeah, I know. The longest I've lived anywhere is in LA. But yeah, yes, there was a time where I had enough speeding tickets that I had to I had a warning on my license. There was a period where in 6 months I got 4 or 5 of them. And was I speeding in all those cases?
Of course.
Yes. But it was just bad luck that they happened to all just be one right on top of each other.
Now, and we talked a lot about driving on our most recent 433 segment on Tuesday's episode, and speeding did not come up in the conversation.
No, well, I'm totally reformed.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the reason why I haven't gotten a speeding ticket since then is I've gone the other direction. I'm a very deliberate driver now, probably to an annoying degree.
Have you ever gotten a ticket for going too slow?
Not yet.
Sir, do you have an idea how slow you were going?
Yeah. Did you ever get driving
speeding tickets? Yeah, I got them mostly in Wisconsin when I was living there, and also then when I was young.
Sure, yeah.
And as previously discussed, I used to just drive around a lot, and would drive on these long straight country roads, and would be going 70 or 80 or whatever, and then get pulled over.
Yeah, part of my problem is that I do not have a face that charms. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My husband can sweet talk his way out of anything.
Yeah.
And I can't.
But also,
people see me coming and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna get this guy good."
Sure. It's not the face though. I think it's the attitude, because I'm sure that you're like, all right, I know I was wrong.
Just resign.
You don't go in with a fight, right?
No, that's true.
The only time I talked my way out of a ticket was when I was in high school. I was working for a construction company, and I was driving a truck back to the office, and from wherever it was. And again, country road, long, straight, high speed limit as it was. But I didn't think that I was speeding. Possibly I wasn't paying that close attention, but I didn't think that I was speeding. And the officer said, that I was going however fast I said I was going. Didn't have the speed gun, or at least couldn't show it to me. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I just wouldn't do that in a company truck. I get why you would, or in another vehicle, possibly I would have been speeding in this scenario. But in a company truck, I just wouldn't do that. And he was like, okay, let me go.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Amazing.
If you want to support more mischief like that, is that mischief? Just defending myself against
I don't think
law
it's mischief,
enforcement.
especially if you don't think you were speeding.
Right.
And you genuinely probably wouldn't speed in a company truck.
Not intentionally.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
No, I would say that's the opposite of mischief. I'd say that's being very responsible.
If you want to support being responsible, you should head on over to patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, where if you support us at the 8 or 16-bit levels, you get access to our once-a-month episodes of miniseries like NCS at the Movies.
Yeah, where Patrick, myself, and usually a special guest are going to the movies together and then talking about it afterwards. At the end of April, really beginning of May, we're going to be talking about The Devil Wears Prada 2.
Yes.
And I know on Tuesday I said that I hadn't seen the original Devil Wears Prada for 20 years since it came out, and but I watched it just the other night.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, it's on Hulu right now.
So you're ready.
I'm up to speed. I remember things that happen in it now.
How important do you think that's going to be? to like remember the things that happen in it. Like,
I think it's gonna.
do you need to remember which Harry Potter book Andy had to secure for the kids?
Right.
You know?
Well, it's unnamed. I think you're going to have to. She just needs to get the new one.
That's right.
But I think that I have a feeling that like faces are going to be important.
Yeah.
Because I think there's going to be a lot of cameos.
I think that's probably right.
Suspicion. Anyways,
I think we see Rich Summer in the new one.
Oh yeah. I just watched it and I'm still like, what is this character's deal?
I don't know. He's like sort of in their friend group. We're gonna save all this for
right.
Devil Wears Prada 2 discussion. Yes.
But yeah. Anyways, you at any level of the Patreon, including free, there is content available to you from past miniseries, including NCS Detective Club, NCS Goes Broadway, and 3 seasons of NCS Arcade. So go over and check that out.
Please do. Also, if you are interested in chit-chatting with us and with other people who listen to the show, you should be in our Discord. Email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com. We will send you an invitation. You can go in there and chat to your heart's content. And also, if you're thinking to yourself like, I don't know, I don't really want like a full-time job of being like in a Discord, you can drift in and out. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Hang out for a little bit, leave, come back. It's a very low expectations space.
Absolutely.
And if you want to talk about games you're playing, games you're excited about, that is a good place to do it. All right, Mark, let's get into our topic. Let's discuss graphical showcases on Nintendo systems. Why are we thinking about this? Why are we talking about this, Mark?
Well, Star Fox is in the air.
Star Fox is in the air. He's in the space.
Yes.
He's among the stars.
Yes. Star Fox is among the stars. And, one of the hallmarks of especially early Star Fox is that it was a graphical showcase for what the Super Nintendo could do. And that just got us thinking about, well, what other times have we been wowed or impressed or a third
otherwise impacted
yes.
by the visuals in a game that appears on a Nintendo system. And I think like another one of the little things that I was pinging for you, Mark, was like Capcom getting their most recent releases to perform on Switch, right? Pragmata and Resident Evil Requiem. Both games that seemingly look, neither of us have seen Pragmata yet, of course, but games that look good on the Switch too. Maybe not to the same level that they are on other platforms, and in fact, definitely not. But it's just like there's something happening right now where there is a visual fidelity on, especially Switch 2, which is like heretofore sort of unimaginable on Nintendo platforms. So we find ourselves being just like a little bit wowed, a little bit impressed with the graphics on those games. I think there are a couple, like, we, of course, as we do when we usually do a topic like this, have come prepared with like 3 to 5 examples of graphical showcases that we want to talk about. But like, I feel like there's one like big, and stop me if this is on your list and you want to talk about it separately, but like the jump into 3D with the Nintendo 64 and Mario 64 is like such a like a sea change, such like a like, oh my god, I didn't know that this was possible kind of thing. I don't have it on my list because that doesn't feel like a strictly graphical achievement. That feels more like an achievement in game design and like understanding 3D platforming before anyone else did. But it is like it was one of the first things that I thought of like in this category.
Yeah, totally. It's not on my list either, but it was at 100% like a wow moment. I didn't know that this was possible.
Yes.
And such a sea change for like the Mario series.
Right. Which isn't, traditionally known for, or wasn't at that time known for like state of the art graphics, like stuff that looked good and was well designed. And some of my entries will come down to just like being well designed.
100%.
And one of the things that like kind of after the Super Nintendo, it's sort of like Nintendo's never on the bleeding edge ever again.
I would argue that the GameCube
is close. Yeah. So I don't have any entries on GameCube.
Oh, I do. Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Which is typical, I think, for lists that we make like this. That I have nothing on GameCube and you
Uh-huh.
do. But yeah, and like I think there are a lot of good answers on GameCube. Again, a handful that I like saw and dismissed myself for not having a super strong connection to them at the time. But I am excited to talk about them.
Yeah, and this was one that for me, like if we get to it at the end and we haven't talked about some, like I have a number of honorable mentions
Sure.
where probably not enough to make the main list, or I didn't have enough to say about them to make the main
Right.
list, but all noteworthy for sure.
Well, okay. Would you like to go first, or would you like to go second? Or actually, I just want to just throw the brakes on for a second. Is there any other like piece of table setting or like other thing? Because like this is not really what I would consider a strength of Nintendo as a developer or publisher, right? They are often very well art designed games, but as far as like graphical power is concerned, it's just not. Like I think those accolades generally go elsewhere, right?
Yeah, I think that's especially true post GameCube, where the GameCube was the last system that they really tried to play the like graphical powerhouse game, right? They tried to play the spec game,
Right.
where it's like our system competes on a graphical level, and then they stopped doing that with the Wii, and pretty much the Wii onwards. They've chosen to be like a generation behind everybody
Right.
else.
Right. Which means that at the beginning of each new leap forward, they have a lot of catching up to do.
Right.
But yeah, it means that for a whole generation, they get to be pumping out games at a speed faster than everybody else.
That's where it's especially interesting in like the Switch, and even more so the Switch 2 era, where yes, they are still behind, but we are seeing these things like Pragmata, like Resident Evil Requiem, other third-party games that are day and date, that are parity gameplay wise,
Right.
and graphic fidelity close to what other platforms are doing. It's
Yeah.
been so long since we've seen that on Nintendo.
Well, and some of that is also just due, I think, I don't know, I've seen any reporting about this, but like because Xbox has this demand that like all Xbox Series games will run feature complete on Series S and Series X, that like all games are being designed with this like sliding scale of like you just turn down some graphical settings, and if you can just turn them down a little bit more, then they'll also run on Switch too. So I do think there's a way where Xbox has kind of opened the door for that to be a standard reach for third-party developers.
Yeah. And also to your point that you were talking about earlier, it's not just like this is the most, like not every entry on my list is this is the most bleeding edge.
Right.
It's not a graphical showcase because it is the most like the highest graphical fidelity. Sometimes it is just because it is outstanding for some other reason.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well then, with all of that out of the way, would you like to go first, or would you like to go second?
I'll go first. My first entry is Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo.
Yes.
So this was the first Castlevania game on the Super Nintendo. I think the first on like a 16-bit system, and it is a kind of a retelling of the first game, but the difference is that graphically it is radically different from the previous three, in that they are showing big, beautiful sprites, like
huge
almost
sprites.
too big.
Yes.
Like Simon is like a fifth of the screen,
Yes.
which is so different from the original Castlevania games, where your avatar characters are more like Mario size. You know what I mean? Like there's so much world around them. In this game, Simon takes up so much space, but it is incredible looking. But the thing that it has like detailed environments and all that kind of stuff. But
I do just want to confirm this is in fact the first Castlevania on a 16-bit platform.
And look, it has lots of slowdown to go along with all of those big, beautiful graphics.
But
the thing I really wanted to talk about is the fourth level in the game is the Clockwork Mansion.
Yes.
And they go totally crazy with Mode 7 graphics in
yes.
the Clockwork Mansion.
So Mode 7 is such an interesting like effect on the on Super NES games, because it is by and large just used to make a to like tilt a single polygon, or like a background, to like give it some kind of depth, right? Like Final Fantasy 3 does that, Secret of Mana does that, but you can also just use it to like rotate and stretch what is basically a sprite, and that's what's happening in the Clockwork Mansion, Clockwork Tower.
Clockwork Mansion. Yeah, exactly. So the Super Nintendo had 8 modes that developers could use to display background graphics, and Mode 7, like you were saying, is a single layer, like a single graphic that can be scaled and rotated and all that kind of stuff. And so the 4th level in the game, Clockwork Mansion, each stage in it kind of shows off a different gimmick that you could do with Mode 7. So there's one where you like hang by a whip on a claw type thing, and then the entire background rotates around you. And then in just the next one, it almost becomes like one of those funhouse tunnels that as you're walking like through it,
yes,
the tunnel rotates around you. So that's basically what's happening to Simon, is as he's going through the level, like the background is like wrapping around him and rotating. It's just totally bananas. And I remember being a kid and seeing that and just thinking that it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
That was 1991, Mark, that game came out. So like, yeah, it's a mind-bending technique. And like, Nintendo themselves, obviously like F-Zero is really hard into the Mode 7 stuff, but like they don't really tap into like really interesting uses of it, and like maybe ever. Like it's really, they end up leaning way more on the Super FX chip and Super FX 2 chip for like Star Fox and like Yoshi's Island, which makes those games have like a graphical style that like could not be replicated on anything else until like we figured out that emulation. But yeah, it's crazy that Konami was like, Mode 7, give me that. Let me do some cool stuff with it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the Nintendo probably used it in Pilot Wings as well. There's a lot of it in Pilot Wings. But
there is it kind of just the one feature of it, though.
Yeah, it's definitely, I can't think of an instance where they were like Konami was with Super Castlevania 4, where it was just every trick in the book.
Right.
Or just like pulling it out just to wow you, not necessarily for gameplay reasons, just for the graphical impact of it.
Just because it'll be impressive looking.
Yeah.
All right. Super Castlevania 4, a great pick. I'll stay on the Super NES as long as we're there. And I got to mention Donkey Kong Country.
Oh man. Yes.
That's and there's really nothing special that they were doing here. As far as like the actual game itself, it's all in the art design of the characters and the levels and everything. Every object in the game was pre-rendered on, much more impressive hardware than the Super NES. And then they were just scanned and were made into sprites. And it looked like you were playing a 3D video game. It looked like you were playing Toy Story, which felt impossible yet true. And of course, in retrospect, like, it doesn't look good at all. But is just like it was like gobsmacking.
Yes, it was. And you're right. Like, it isn't that impressive nowadays. I think a lot of it is a triumph of marketing, because Nintendo really leaned into it, and they really marketed it hard, and that became my gospel. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it all made sense to me. Like, this is the most incredible thing. This is so advanced.
But it's an interesting technique, because like we're only a couple years, because Donkey Kong Country is 1994, right? And we're only a couple years into like Mortal Kombat being a thing at this point, right? Mortal Kombat was taking photographs, digitizing those, and using those for sprites. And like Clay Fighter would do like kind of the same thing with claymation and just digitize that. Obviously, like Killer Instinct would do the same thing that Donkey Kong Country was doing. But like the idea of not just using the like graphics engine inside the thing to generate the images was like that just wasn't part of the lexicon at that point. So like and the fact that it is using another computer to do it makes it all the more like it just makes it feel so technological.
It really did, especially in the early age of personal computers and the internet and all of that. It just felt very, and was sold to us as, very advanced.
Yes. Well, and also like you play that on a CRT TV, like it's gonna look pretty good.
I mean, I
like
mean,
the
I have
illusion
so
was,
much.
yes.
I have so much nostalgia for the way that game looks, and I would say even it did look good.
Yeah. What's weird is like as an adult, I'm like, I don't really like these rare designs. Like I think the designs of the characters are bad, but the execution is so charming that like it kind of outweighs it. Like I think that like the vulture characters, that like Neki, or like the Lil Nekis,
the flamingo, but yes,
this is not a flamingo, it's a vulture. I think those look stupid. I think the naughties, the beavers, I think they look stupid.
The beavers, I think, are cute.
Okay, fine. A lot of the Kremlings are like objectively dumb looking.
No, I agree with you. I'm not really into the overall like rare aesthetic.
Yes,
it is not my favorite, but
the execution is just something that is so like specific and of that moment in time.
Yeah,
and felt like it was from the future.
Yeah, it felt so revolutionary.
And of course, like everything that felt like it was from the future at the time now dreadfully feels like it's from the past. But I'll maintain that was a graphical showcase at the time. And so much of its perceived value at the time was that
100%.
And I think people had to come around like a couple years later to be like, oh yeah, it's also actually a really good game, right? That like the platforming's really good. But so yeah, Donkey Kong Country is my first entry here.
I'm going to move on to the GameCube now.
There we go.
For my second entry, and it's Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader.
That game looks so good. It's sort of crazy how good that game
looks.
Yeah,
it is sort of crazy, especially so there was a Rogue Squadron game, like the first one on the Nintendo 64.
Yes,
and you can imagine what that looked like. It was a pretty good looking game.
Yeah,
I mean, it was probably a great looking game for the Nintendo 64.
I think that's a game that looks better than the other Star Wars games. It looks better. Does this go without saying? They look better than Shadows of the Empire.
right. Yes.
It looked better than Episode 1 Racer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but compared to Rogue Squadron 2, it looks laughable. Like the leap from those Nintendo 64 graphics to what the GameCube was doing, that really felt like, holy cow, we are in the big time now. And this was a launch title, Rogue Squadron 2. So it starts... The first level is the Death Star attack. And I think that this is where, especially graphically, like the game peaks because it's such a wow moment when it starts off. You're on the exterior of the Death Star, not in a trench run yet. And there are all of these green lasers shooting everywhere along this star field. And it just looked unbelievably good. It still holds up pretty well. Now you can see the magic trick a little bit more. You can
see some of the seams.
Yeah, like those lasers that are being shot and all that stuff. It's all in the background. It doesn't actually have anything to do with like what's going on. And that first mission, like the initial thing you're doing are just blowing up like 5 discrete towers. So the seams show now, especially when you look back on it. But I was looking at video of this when I was putting my list together, and even today, it's a pretty wow moment when the game first starts, when you can first take control of it.
It really is.
And you're like in the middle of the Death Star battle. It's pretty cool.
I've talked a fair amount on the show about like trying out the various because Aspire this publisher Aspire got the rights to like republish a lot of the sort of like PlayStation 2 era Star Wars games, and like I always bump up against like the graphics on them, right? Like there's always just it just always feels a little too clunky, a little too like PCE for me. And it is remarkable how much Rogue Leader, is that the name of this
Rogue
game?
Squadron.
Rogue Squadron is able to like get ahead and stay ahead of all of those games. And some of that is like, because it's all just like the vehicle combat, it's all just flying around. And, especially in that like Death Star sequence, half of the screen is space.
Yeah.
So like, they're able to cut corners, but like there's a Hoth section there that looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of mind bending, just the level of detail and how smoothly it ran at the time.
Yeah, it's too bad. I don't know if it's rights issues. I don't know if what the deal is. I remember during the Wii era, there was a lot of discussion about like it would be awesome to get the Rogue Squadron games.
Yeah.
Because there was a third one at least on GameCube as well. Like it'd be awesome to get the Rogue Squadron games on Wii. But yeah, for whatever reason, we've just never. I don't think these have ever been republished.
Yeah,
I don't know that they're
I
available
don't think
now,
so.
like on Steam or anything.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Great looking games. Great pick, Mark. And was that game published by Nintendo?
No, I think it was a LucasArts game.
Okay. That makes sense. But obviously, like Nintendo had some sort of like partnership with them at this time. Right. Well, I guess. Sorry, I was sort of thinking about Nintendo 64 era as well. That just like,
well, maybe because of that they had a good relationship, because they must have, Factor 5 must have had an early GameCube development kit in order for it to be a launch title. So
totally. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit more design and like ambition focused on my next entry, because I'm gonna talk about a Game Boy game. And it's a Game Boy game that like I don't think we think of as graphically impressive, but everything that is good about it can be traced back to its graphics and designs. And I'm referring to Pokemon Red and Blue and Green, because Marcus, as a young fan of JRPGs, I tried a lot of them on the original Game Boy, and you run out of like in a Final Fantasy Legends game or Final Fantasy Adventures. Adventures is which I forget which one is the mana game and which one is the saga like game, but doesn't matter. Either way, you run out of enemy character designs so quickly, and they just start like recycling them after there's maybe like a dozen. And Pokemon has this insane commitment to 151 of these little characters that you see from the front, that you see from the back, that you see miniature versions of, and it's just a glut of design. And as most of those characters have withstood the test of time, it is a glut of some of the best design there is in the world. Everything is so simple and so clean, and like you can immediately read the character on the screen, and you've never seen an Onyx before, but you see it and you're like, that's a big rock snake. It all reads perfectly, and in black and white. It's I find the original Pokemon games, and I'm finding this more as I play more of Leaf Green, that I'm missing the sort of simplicity and like hyper cleanness of the original Game Boy games.
Oh, that's such a good point. Like the Pokemon games, those early ones, especially when you're talking about like what they were able to achieve on the Game Boy. And I don't mean that from like I mean maybe they were, but like squeezing every graphical pixel out of it.
Yeah.
But I mean more that on a system that has such the capability for such simple graphics, like what is the enduring thing about Pokemon is the design of those characters, right?
Absolutely.
The design of that world. And and it persists. Every Pokemon is somebody's favorite Pokemon.
100%. And they all look good in the original Pokemon. And it just like is sort of staggering to me that it can look as good as it does on that little screen. I have as a little side note here that Pokemon Yellow on Game Boy Color is also like a good like sort of add-on thing to this. Partially because like that Pikachu follows you around, and like you can see this Pikachu following you the whole time, and it's the first time that it's all in color, which is also a fun little magic trick, especially after the Game Boy had been around for almost a decade by the time Game Boy Color comes out, and that it's just like that feels like another like moment of like, oh my god, I guess I knew that this sort of thing was possible because like Game Gear and all that other stuff, would do color, but it still has the sort of that magic of the Game Boy where it's like this will still run on 2 AA batteries and it'll
Right.
run forever, and it doesn't feel like it's blasting me in the face with like electrons or whatever. Those games are all remarkably good looking.
And I think obviously that Pikachu in his modern design is incredibly cute. Like there are so many incredibly cute Pokemon. But did you see that for the anniversary this year, they did a release of plush of like old school chubby
Oh man,
Pikachu?
Chunky Pikachu,
And it sold out like immediately, and it was kind of like grayscale and everything,
Yes.
like it came from a Game Boy screen. But that forever is my favorite Pikachu design, just like early Yoshi is forever my favorite Yoshi design.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's good Pikachu.
Yeah, it's good Pikachu, and there's a reason why when they put out the that strange like hit fix Game Boy player of the original Pokemon tunes.
Oh,
that like it's covered in the graphics of the original game.
Yeah,
because like it looks good.
They
harnessed something, and like we continue to like see the 8-bit like Mario sprite and the 8-bit like Link sprite, but like doesn't really extend too far outside of like a handful of characters in each of those franchises. But like we'll see like those versions of those Pokemon forever.
Is Pokemon, and are those designs that were made for the Game Boy, is that the most like long lasting franchise? I mean, it must be, that originated on Game Boy. Like I can't think of another even like close
to... we never got a sequel to Mole Mania. Not too many franchises originate on Game Boy,
right?
So yeah,
that in and of itself is pretty remarkable.
Yep.
I'm gonna jump
he's jumping
ahead to just this last year.
Yes,
because I want to talk about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Yeah,
because whatever
this is fascinating
you want to say about the content of the game itself, I think there's something from the very beginning of that game when you first land on Vuros and like you're in the Chrono Tower and like Volt Forge, like the opening of that game.
Yes.
There's really something about the design of like the Lemorne's world, and that
labial is the word you're looking
for. Yeah, there's
Yes.
something about it that is that felt like so unique and so interesting to me that has really stuck with me from that game.
Yeah,
I really love the way that game looks. The world of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, I think, is outstanding.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and like for all of the sort of like repeated styles of environments, here's the hot place, here's the cold place, they do still manage to pull out some like genuinely like new or like non-typical environments, like the Volt Forge and this like storm that's happening outside all the time, and the sort of like ruined factory that you're in is such a like compellingly graphically expressed tale, that like that's where the storytelling is in the game. Yeah, there are these like marine guys that are out there with you, and like one of them goes native and whatever. But like that's really where the like the juice of the story is in the graphics.
Yeah, and like where it really, I think, like stands out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because like I don't think that necessarily fits the when we get to like modern games, and I have an example that flies in the face of this too. So this isn't a criticism, but like when you call like a modern game a graphical showcase, usually mean that it's like super high fidelity or whatever.
Right.
And like Metroid Prime 4 is a Switch game that they also made, that they upgraded for Switch 2. So it doesn't look like the most immaculate, but the designs are, like, as you say, top-notch.
The design is is pretty incredible, I think. Probably my favorite thing about that game.
The design. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that makes sense. How is that, just out of curiosity, how's that game aging in your memory now?
I don't think about it at all.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it since we had our like spoiler conversation about it.
Yeah. My gut instinct is that I don't know that I want to play it again, but I think the opening hours are pretty good because like through Volt Forge and all of that,
Yeah.
I think is a pretty is a very like streamlined, like this is exactly what I want out of Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
And it's I think later that the game kind of
I
loses
think
its way a little bit,
it's
but
pretty
like
late before it loses its way. I mean, well, we don't need to relitigate
Yeah.
Metroid Prime 4, but yeah, okay, I'll just move on to my next
Okay.
one. Maybe I've opened a bigger can of worms. Reevaluating Metroid Prime 4
Well,
6
I'll,
months
I'll
later.
just I'll just say that I mean, but I kind of feel that way about what I think is the best Metroid Prime game, the original Metroid Prime. When I played replayed remastered, another incredible looking game, another like graphical showcase.
Not on your list.
Not on my list.
Yeah.
But yeah, Metroid Prime Remastered. Again, the opening hours of those games, you're exploring the world, or that game, you're exploring the world, all that kind of stuff. It's like, this is incredible. And then you get to the end, and that's where I would rather be doing anything else than playing this game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe it's just a series hallmark.
I think it kind of is. I don't think there is a Metroid Prime game that doesn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to suggest one that does not overstay its welcome, email us, Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com,
or get in that Discord. Okay, I'm going to bring us back. Mark, I'm pulling us back. We've moved too far ahead into the future. I want to get back to some impressive water on the Nintendo 64, Wave Race 64. I had mentioned like, oh yeah, could very easily Mario 64 be on this list of like, you're moving around in 3D space, you're Mario, and it's great and it looks so colorful and fun. But Wave Race was the first time I remember playing Nintendo 64 and thinking that some magic had been achieved with the water. This game has such dynamic water that isn't just beautiful. It is beautiful and like semi, translucent in just like the right ways. But it is also like constantly like the physics of it feel real.
I think that the physics of it is what makes the magic.
Yeah. And it not only like is visibly like moving in the right ways, but it will then feel like a physical impact on you, the player, because it will bounce your jet ski around. And it just, I just don't think there was anything like this. And like to this day, what video games are really like messing around with like waves and making them bounce the player around? It's only Wave Race 64.
Yeah, that I agree with you. When it was released on Nintendo Classics, that was really the first time in many, many, many years that I messed around with it at all. And it's remarkable how like not a lot of Nintendo 64 ages well in my opinion, but that aspect of it, like the graphics working in time with the physics and just the atmosphere of the whole thing,
Absolutely.
really even hold up today.
I also think there's something really appealing about like there's only 4 racers in the game, like four characters, and they're all like just humans.
Yeah.
There's no weirdos in this game, right? None of the characters is like a mummy or whatever.
Right.
And they're all wearing helmets, so like we don't have to render faces.
It's a fun idea though. A mummy on a jet ski.
There's a mummy on a jet ski.
That's a fun idea.
Write that down. But that like all of it just works in a very like just streamlined kind of way, and then lets the water and the environment really sing. Because there are times when like you'll be racing and it's raining or like it's bright sunny.
I love that. When it's stormy and the waves are huge.
Yep.
And you're trying to make those tight turns.
God, that game rocks so hard.
And the soundtrack is incredible.
The soundtrack is like quintessential city pop, Japanese city pop. Like it's beautiful and it just grooves and feels great, and there's a ripping saxophone over it. So, Wave Race 64.
Do you know, again, not on my list, but Mario 64, the thing that always, like, the cherry on top of the whole thing, when I was always like, this is incredible. Like, that this can be achieved by humans in a video game is incredible, and it was Metal Mario.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
And how it's, like, reflective.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's incredible stuff.
Blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Not on my list.
Totally agree, and also not on my list.
Yeah. Let's see. Next on my list, since you were talking about water, 100% agree with Wave Race 64, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring up a personal fave of mine.
Here we go.
The water in Super Mario Sunshine.
Yes.
It is similar to Wave Race 64, so important to the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I think still holds up pretty well to this day. And it's another one of those things where it's like, again, in preparation for this, I was watching some videos online about how they achieve it, and a lot of it is over my head. But
Please explain it all.
yeah, but it's seemingly like a lot of really simple tricks that they are layering together to create this. So I just have the world of Super Mario Sunshine. I've already talked about my love of Piantas before. Like it's just like,
and I'm not even challenging you on it right now.
It's such a vibes game. It's so much
this
like
is so true. Yes,
hanging out at like the beach in this tropical atmosphere.
In a way that truly no other Mario game does, right?
100%.
That like other Mario games, yes, show you different worlds and you travel different places, and like Odyssey's very, very good at that. But,
and
like,
has some like beautiful beaches.
Totally.
In Odyssey, yeah.
But like that the beach and the sea of Super Mario Sunshine is like the heart of the game.
You spend so much time in the ocean.
Yep.
And it like graphically still holds up today. Like it looks really good, and it's remarkable that they were able to achieve that on a Nintendo GameCube.
Now, of course, the game would be better if it featured a mummy on a jet ski.
Yeah. Or a mummy on a stingray. A racing ray.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, not enough Nintendo games have mummies in them.
That fabric flapping in the wind.
Yeah, that's right. And then you pull it fast enough and the whole thing spins around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There must be mummy enemies in a Mario game, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are mummy enemies in Super Mario Brothers Wonder where you grab like
that's right.
And you pull
that's
them.
right. Yeah.
Sort of exactly the thing I was just describing, as though it was my original thought. Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, don't feel bad about that. Anything that can be done to a mummy has been done to a mummy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, at this point, we're all just repeating things that have already been done to mummies.
Right.
I don't think there's an original. Yeah.
And, we saw in the Minions versus Monsters trailer that a minion wipes his butt with some...
Presumably. We don't see that part.
Oh, you think he's maybe just dabbing after peeing? Super Mario Sunshine, I feel like, also does a great job of expressing scale. That a lot of those levels feel very big in a way that you have to deal with all at once.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking specifically about the like roller coaster area in like pretty early in the game, and you just like have a whole sense of this entire space.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure how they manage that as well as they do.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable.
Okay, for my next pick here, getting down to the bottom, what do I want to go with? I'm going to go with... Okay, so when the Nintendo DS was released, the idea of having any amount of 3D graphics on a handheld system, sort of unthinkable, right? Was just like not part of... a Game Boy or a Game Boy Advance. Those are nice looking, Nintendos or Super NESs, but they're not modern gaming, right? And then the DS comes out, and suddenly there's a game with a polygonal dog in it that looks real enough that you can fall in love with this puppy that you take care of. I'm referring, of course, to Nintendogs on the DS. A game that, without the ability to convince you that there is a puppy on the screen in front of you, means nothing.
Yeah.
And they're so cute, and the animation of those things is so spot on and feels like a living creature. You feel bad when you come back and it's like peed in the house because you haven't been there for 4 days or whatever. And you love it when they run up to you and like slobber all over the screen. And the game is also so minimalist about everything that isn't the dog, right? Like the room that they're in, when you take them on walks and there's like a map of the city or whatever, when you're buying items for them, everything is really minimally expressed. Not a lot of color there. The color and the personality and the intentionality is all in the dog.
Yeah.
And it is just a genius design and prioritization of design of just the dog. So yeah, that's Nintendogs for me is a graphical powerhouse.
Yeah, that's such a good pick. That's such a good point. It's always Nintendogs is always so interesting to me because it was such a phenomenon that burned so bright, but for a relatively short amount of time, and then
right. And then gone. Like they made like one or two of them on 3DS.
Yeah, Nintendogs and Cats.
It's always hard to say exactly how many of these they made because like they would release like individual breeds. Like this is Nintendogs Cocker Spaniels. This is Nintendogs Dalmatians. But yeah, so they sold so many of these games, and I think it's nuts that we don't have a modern Nintendogs.
Yeah, it is kind of.
Should have been a mobile game.
Should have been mobile
when they were doing mobile games.
Yeah. Great pick.
Thank you.
I have another GameCube one. I have such a fondness for the GameCube era.
I mean, this is 3, but that's fine.
Yeah, Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
The original Resident Evil 4 on GameCube was another game where I was like, this is incredible. I can't believe that this is a video game. When you I think it's really a lot of the Resident Evil games, like when we were replaying Resident Evil Remake, I think a lot of the Resident Evil games are such a triumph of like art design that they hold up so well, because I mean Remake's another game from GameCube, but Remake has static backgrounds, right? So they can be very painterly, they can be all that very detailed, all that kind of stuff. And then, but in Resident Evil 4, these are environments that you're walking around in, interacting with, like all that kind of
being
stuff.
Being generated in real time.
Yeah, in a way that wasn't in some of the earlier games.
And it's not the first mainline game to do this, but like the only other one is the only one prior to that is Code Veronica. And Code Veronica, while a beautiful game, is the backgrounds are pretty simply designed. There is a drop in quality from the backgrounds in Resident Evil 3 to Code Veronica, and then somehow 4 marries the two together.
Yeah, 4 it looks incredible. Obviously Remake is a different beast entirely, but even the HD version of Resident Evil 4, like using a lot of the same assets, just upscaled, like I think it goes to show what incredible design was in Resident Evil 4, and not just like graphical power, but like the character design, the location design, all of that stuff really took advantage of what the GameCube was able to do and is incredibly impressive.
2/3 of the location design in Resident Evil 4 is superb. And then there's the final section on the military island where you're like, all right, get out of here.
Yeah.
But the village is an iconic location in like all of games. If you're to like make a list of the most iconic gaming locations, have we done this? Mark, write this down.
No, yeah, this is a great idea.
That like the town at the beginning of Resident Evil 4 is like one of them, and then arguably that like in the castle when they're like the bad guys are going after Ashley and she has to like pull levers and you have to like shoot them out. Like that's another one where it's like, oh yeah, this is games incarnate. This is when you close your eyes and think of where a video game takes place. 2 spots from Resident Evil 4 appear in your mind, or they do in mine.
Yeah.
At any rate. Great pick, Mark. How many of your games, just out of curiosity, how many of your games have been published or developed by Nintendo?
Let's see. Water and Mario Sunshine.
Right.
And Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Okay. So you got 2.
Yeah.
I'm going to make mine a clean sweep and do all of, because I have honorable mentions, not all of which are made by Nintendo. But this one was. And it is one that is much more design focused than it is necessarily like graphical fidelity. And it's also, it speaks to an evolution of a franchise that shouldn't have gotten an evolution, or like that the evolution is just incredibly unlikely. And I'm referring to Emio the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club on the Nintendo Switch. Now, Mark, you and I have talked about this game a bunch. We talked about this series a fair amount. But you got to remember that the series started off as a Famicom Disk System game that was not localized here until it was remade many years later on the Switch. And the original presentation of those games is nice. It's pretty. It's 8-bit graphics, portraits of the characters as they talk to you, and graphics that represent the sort of location behind them. And the first two Famicom Detective Club remakes do a really nice job of rendering the like small town 80s Japan locations that you're visiting, right? The Forgotten Heir like takes place mostly at this like country estate, and like the businesses and houses in the surrounding area, and it all feels so like warm and lived in, and almost has a like Miyazaki-esque quality to the detail in the backgrounds. And Emil the Smiling Man does this to like it ratchets up the focus on the location and setting so high. Like there are times when you are out like in the countryside and you are visiting a character's the house that they grew up in, and you have to like hitch a ride from like a pickup truck, and it's just like fields of like crops, and like it all just feels so like singular to a time and to a space. And there is I think it's chapter 3 in this game where you are left at a bus stop, and there is literally nothing for you to do. You can like try to investigate different areas, but all that the game is literally asking nothing of you during this time. You just have to wait for a cab to drive by, and it doesn't feel like wasted time because you're in this absolutely immaculate space. And then never mind that at the end of the game, there's this wholly mind-blowing, very impressive, like anime cutscene that just expresses some other parts of the game that I don't want to spoil. That is just like incredibly moving and good. It it's just a beautiful game.
Yeah, it's a really no, I completely agree. It's a very special game, and you were talking about like how it evokes this like very specific time and place that neither of us ever
Right.
experienced. But you can tell that it's amazing to me how much that game feels like it was crafted with love.
Yeah.
Like people that did experience those times or like grew up then or whatever, have very specific memories and almost like preserving them in a way.
Yeah, well, and there is like there's a level of like sincerity and like emotional vulnerability to that kind of thing that finds itself expressed again in terms of like the identity of the killer, and even like some of the other characters that you interact with, where it's like there's a character that Ayumi meets with a couple times who is like her old coach, right? Who's like you suspect him for a little bit of like being kind of a pervert with like one of the kids at school, and that's not like exactly what happened there, but like through the interactions with him, you're learning uncomfortable truths about people, and it all just feels very, and I don't know, the game's sort of incredible.
Yeah, yes,
and it has the only way it can express these things, because the gameplay is so limited, and because it's not like a live action or fully animated thing. It's really just through like character art and voice acting. And it succeeds in basically every dimension on that limitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more
one more real one that you want to.
One more real one. Okay. And this is a game that we've talked about a ton. The world has talked about a ton. So I don't know how much we'll need to dwell on it, but there is obviously something very special about the design and the presentation of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like it's part of what makes that game so incredible is the way that it looks. And I just remember,
especially on Switch 2. If you have a Switch 2 and you have not gone back into The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, just do it.
Yeah.
It is a mind-blowing experience to see the game in like a locked 60 FPS. And
I just remember playing that game, and there are so many for the first time, and there are so many locations where I would just like stop and just like look around. You're just like, this is incredible. This world is so fully realized and beautifully rendered. Like it's unbelievable the amount of things and locations and like love that was put into a game. And I think part of the reason why for all the stuff that Tears of the Kingdom did so well, being a repeat of that world just made it a little less special.
Yeah, well,
to me,
because your relationship to the world is so different in Tears of the Kingdom, you don't have to wallow in it the same way that you have to in Breath of the Wild. And so you, instead of like having to push through all of that beauty, you can sort of just like soar above it.
Yeah.
Which like, again, like that, I love Tears of the Kingdom, and I think that changing your relationship to the world is the smartest thing they could have done with a game that reuses the same world.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that makes me think, oh yeah, far and away, Breath of the Wild is the more beautiful game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, like, the depths aren't beautiful.
No, the depths aren't beautiful. I don't really think the Sky Islands are particularly beautiful.
No, they're not. They're not.
But also the way that just like, nature is reflected in Breath of the Wild. So you're in an area and there's wildlife, and then like the rain will, come over the horizon and just kind of like wash over you, rain for a little bit, and then it will subside. Like, there is just so much to enjoy in luxuriating in the environments of Breath of the Wild.
There's also, we'll probably never see them again, but the Guardians as a creature design, especially like Guardians overtaken by nature and they're like mossy and there's like plants growing out of them. That's a goated design. They're so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't come back in Tears of the Kingdom. No Guardians in Tears of the Kingdom. I have honorable mentions beyond here.
Same.
But I do just want to, this isn't a game, but I'd still just think of it always as a graphical showcase. Just in general, the 3DS. And playing one in person and having the 3D effect actually work. Something I didn't believe until I saw it with my own eyes. And then especially with the new 3DS where it does the eye tracking, so you don't have to be like perfectly situated in one space. It's a magic trick. I don't know how. To this day, I don't really get it.
It is pretty cool, and when a game has like worthwhile use of it,
right,
it really does add something to the experience.
Absolutely. Even something, recently played Fire Emblem Awakening, and just seeing that game presented in 3D was beautiful. But yeah, like to get to the games that like use it really well, do you have any on your honorable mentions?
No, I don't.
I mean, Kid Icarus Uprising, Super Mario 3D Land, like two of the standouts for me. Obviously, the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask remakes. Just sort of crazy that these games are being presented to you in glassesless 3D.
Yeah.
Something that, just remains sort of mind-boggling to me to this day. Honorable mentions.
Just some quick hits here. Super Mario Odyssey. That game looks incredible.
It does. It looks really good. I was thinking about that as not mentioning Breath of the Wild, but mentioning Odyssey instead. But it's unfair. They're both beautiful games.
Well, and I think it's another one that's like a triumph of like art design because it has so many mashes of art styles. But that's part of the fun of the experience.
Totally,
is going somewhere and you're like, oh, this kingdom is just like a ruined floating island, and then there's this big like kind of realistic looking dragon.
Right, to the extent of realistic looking dragon is the thing.
Right.
Yes.
That's just what this is. And then later, because the first time we saw New Donk City, there is in that January teaser, it's like, wait, what is this? Why does everybody look so weird?
Yes.
What's the deal with the humans?
Mm-hmm.
But it all
they're called New Donkers.
Yeah. But it all ends up working really well together.
Yep.
And it shouldn't at all. So I think it's a triumph for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I have Mario Brothers Wonder on here because I really love the art style of that game and felt like it was so refreshing after the new Super Mario Brothers kind of like style had been around for so long.
Totally. I like that they don't abandon some of the like new bits of personalities from the new Super Mario Brothers game. the Goombas don't like stop and dance necessarily, but like you'll run into a line of roller skating Koopas, and
Uh-huh.
like that feels like it's cut from the same cloth, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful game. And
Luigi
it looks so much all the more beautiful in the Switch 2 edition that's available now.
Luigi's Mansion 3.
Luigi's Mansion in general.
Yeah, another one where it's just like Luigi's Mansion game does not need to look this good.
But
Luigi's Mansion 3 is like,
but it
all the
always
characters are
does.
so well animated.
Mhm.
Like, they have so much personality. The game, really remarkable.
Do you think that there is an aspect of like the Luigi's Mansion games that they need to look, even in like the ghosts that are translucent and that are flying around, that they need to look like physical objects to like cast that sort of like haunted house, haunted mansion spell?
Oh, that's interesting.
Like they have to almost make them look more janky. They have to look like effects in meat space.
Uh-huh.
And I think they mostly achieve that.
Yeah, I don't think of Luigi's Mansion 2 as a graphical showcase, but that makes sense because it was a 3DS game.
Right.
But
yes.
the first game, yeah, another one where it's like, wow, this is kind of remarkable that they were able to pull off some of these tricks on the GameCube.
Although I gotta just, as we have done multiple times on the show, go to bat for the Luigi's Mansion 2 HD on Switch.
I openly scoffed at it at the show, and then when
we both did.
When I bought it, and I can't remember if I played it for when it like immediately when it came out. I think maybe I did, but anyways, I couldn't put it down. I literally could not stop playing that game.
It's so fun.
Yeah,
and like I get the criticism of like they keep kicking you out of the mansion so that you have to like do these things in little chapters. I don't know, perfect length of gameplay for me.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I love being able to walk away after 15 minutes and not have to remember everything that's going on.
Last honorable mention I have is Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah, beautiful game.
Beautiful game.
I can only be true to myself, so my first honorable mention has to be Zoda's Revenge Star Tropics 2.
In what I would love to know, in what
Yes.
way is this a graphical showcase?
It's a game on the NES,
Uh-huh.
but it basically looks and has the sort of graphical resources of a Super NES game.
Really?
So it is still obviously 8-bit, right? And it reuses tiles and all this kind of stuff. But the number of like full screen splash pages of a character talking to you that you're never going to see again because we're moving away from the Cleopatra time. We got to move on to Sherlock Holmes time, which isn't a time, but a fictional universe, whatever. We're not going to nitpick these things about Zoda's Revenge Star Tropics 2. It just has all of these little like cut scenes and characters talking to you about their problems, and these things are all like animated in ways where I'm like, I can't think of another game that goes through like that jumps the presentational hurdles that Star Tropics 2 does.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Like it is expressing itself like a Super NES game, and it is either the last game that Nintendo published on the NES or the second to last. I can never remember if it's that or Wario's Woods. And it is just so ambitious and has a lot of cool and fun and funny designs in it that, that's why I count it as a graphical show.
Yeah, I should watch like a long play of it or something. I don't know that I have any familiarity with what Zoda's Revenge looks like, really.
I think you and I played some of it on the Wii U.
Okay.
But that would have been like 10 years ago. So, who knows? And then my other honorable mention is not a Nintendo developed game and is a game that looks better on other platforms, but Tetris Effect. Or Tetris Effect Connected, I believe as it is called on the Switch. Just a way to like throw a bunch of particles and like pulsing lights over a game of Tetris that then also plays like cool meditative club music in an attempt to like genuinely short circuit your brain, and it does. It's just a wonderful thing, and most of that is achieved by these flashing lights.
Remind me, did you play some of it in PlayStation VR?
I sure did.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, that's I forget who it was, but back when the game was originally released, I think it was one of the IGN guys, was like playing Tetris Effect on PlayStation 4. You're like, wow, this is a really good game. Playing it in PSVR is like, oh, this is how religions start. truly wonderful, like spiritual experience playing it. All right, that's all of my honorable mentions. Anything else you want to say, Mark, about graphics and Nintendo?
No, I don't think so.
All right, great. Then let us close this out. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Thank you to our 16-bit patrons, Connor McCabe, Kyle Seaborn, Drew Mackey, and Anthony Lobergellis. Join our Discord if you're not there already. Email us. We'll send you an invitation. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8BitBetty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying thank you for listening.